For the land bank. Yeah, Caitlin, you could come up and, are you coming up alone or?
Well,
You got
Pat's here
hold-
as our board chair. Pat's,
Over here, sir.
I'm also joined by two of our board members
Okay,
for the benefit of folks at home. I guess I should talk into the mic.
I could pass them down.
Yes, thank you. Here's a set for you, a set for you. Jonathan Link Logan and Nancy Quigg are also on our board and are joining us here today.
Okay. All right, and as the counselors, we have Counselor Hogan, Counselor Peniagua, and Counselor Schultz, and myself, Counselor Allen. So what we'll do, Caitlin, you can kind of just go through your presentation, and then if you guys have any questions in between, you can stop and ask questions, or we can wait until the end. Whatever is, we're just gonna go with the flow here. So whatever we feel like doing in this one.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have a half an hour allocated for this, or?
You have a whole hour, yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully we
You need
won't
the
take
whole
that. We
hour?
won't take that long. So I'm showing you here our adopted budget for 2022 through 2025 and our financial statements for last year for 2021. So this shows, this is, I talked about this last week. This was the first year since 2016 that the land bank did not lose money, and so we did not have to dip into our fund balance. But as you see on the adopted budget, if you go all the way to the last page, that'll show you kind of what we're projecting for year end each year.
Which sheet are you on? This one?
is
Okay.
Yeah, on the very back page of that.
Okay.
All the way at the bottom, it's page 404, it says unrestricted cash at the end of 2020, and then it'll show how much is projected to remain in our fund balance each year. Now, this budget has a couple of assumptions in it. On page 1, you see that we have not inserted an amount for City of Syracuse for this coming fiscal year. The mayor's proposed budget includes $750,000 for the land bank for this coming year. So if we're projecting here being in the hole about $1.7 million, that money from the city will mean that we're only losing $1 million instead of 1.7, which helps to push off the inevitable depletion of our fund balance. So without that money, we would certainly run out of operating capital in the coming fiscal year. So that is going to be really critical to us continuing to be able to operate through June 30 of 2023.
Where would you make up the $1 million from?
We would have to draw down from our fund balance for that.
It's not in here.
So
It's just zeroed out.
when this budget was adopted by our board of directors, we didn't know yet what was going to be proposed in this fiscal year, so we left that blank. But if you were to put 750 there, that would take this $1.7 million deficit and shrink it to a $1 million deficit.
I just bootleg wrote it in there.
Now, generally speaking, when we get funds from the city to do demolitions or stabilization work, it's very helpful because it helps us to accomplish our mission, but that grant money coming in is canceled out by the expenditure down below for we're spending it on demolitions and stabilization. So, we're currently spending down $5 million of ARPA funds, and that is, definitely, like I said, helping us to achieve our mission of getting more properties back into productive use. But it really has very little net effect on our fund balance at the end of the year.
How are you guys spending the ARPA funds? What are you using it towards?
$3.8 million is going towards demolitions and $1.2 million towards stabilization. I did recently ask if we could get a contract extension for that because we're supposed to spend those funds by June 30th. But our demolition of this year, yeah, we signed a contract to spend it all in 1 year. And I thought that we could, but our demolition contractors have been experiencing a lot of difficulty getting jobs done. Over the winter, it was because of the extremely cold temperatures that the DOL would not let them work if it was under 20 degrees because they have to hose down these sites to keep the asbestos down. So that slowed us down a little. And now, the one that has the most jobs has had one of their licensed asbestos handlers out with COVID for an extended period of time. So they should have been doing at least 2 houses a week, but there was probably a month there where we didn't get any done, so we fell behind. And now we have 2 that are actively working, so we're getting at least 3 a week done. We've got another bid package out. The bids are due on Friday. And I'm confident that that'll get a 3rd contractor into the mix. So at that point, we should get up to be doing 5 a week. And I'm confident that we'll get all of that done by November at this pace. On the stabilization side, we are almost done with everything that has been allocated to date, all the contracts that have been awarded. We've done about 18 homes. We're doing things like roofs, windows, siding, replacing rotten structural framing, and doing a lot of foundation repair as well. And the idea being that this will take a home that might have otherwise been a demolition candidate and make it feasible for a private person to buy it and to finish the renovations once we've done that stabilization work. We're also doing a lot of porch rebuilds. I'm sure you've noticed in Syracuse that that's a big problem. I don't know why that's so prevalent. I guess they weren't built on proper footers in the first place, but we're doing a lot of porch rebuilds right now as well. So there is $300,000 in that pot that hasn't been allocated yet. And we're waiting on bids on a couple of jobs. We're going to do probably 2 more houses, and we're trying to get bids to replace the roof and do some masonry repair at 917 Montgomery. That's in the Blueprint 15 target area. It used to be an auto repair shop. You might know it's at the corner of Montgomery and Burt. It's a little red brick building. And it's a really neat building that we think is a great candidate for adaptive reuse. And we've been talking to Blueprint 15 about some of the small businesses that they would like to attract to operate in that neighborhood. But if we were to tear it down, it would be very hard to rebuild something there because it's a relatively small parcel. So we really want to be able to save that building. It does, however, need a new roof and extensive masonry repair because it's been neglected for decades. So we're anticipating that that could be about a $200,000 project just to stabilize the shell of the building. But we think it's a worthwhile investment, and I'm expecting that we'll have bids on that by Monday. And so then the remaining $100,000 that hasn't been allocated yet would cover at least 2 more houses.
Okay.
So you said that the $5 million of ARPA you expected to spend by the end of this year,
Yes.
that you're not going to make that, or you are going to make that?
Oh, no, we were initially shooting for June 30th. We're not going to make that, but we're confident we can get it done by the end of the year.
Okay.
And
so
they'll allow you an
extensions-
extension?
Yeah, extension's not a problem.
Well, that's a question for you, actually. So we signed a contract with the city saying that we would finish by June 30th, and we would need to come back and amend that contract to extend the term.
Well, as far as ARPA is concerned, I think it's 2024 that the money has to be spent, so I don't see a problem with an extension, so send it on over.
Now, in addition to potentially extending the term of that contract, if there is any ARPA money to be spared, we could certainly spend more, probably in 2023. And once all of that is done, we will have done about 150 demolitions with that $3.8 million, but we're still going to have another 80 properties left in our inventory that we don't have funds to address. And there's a couple of possibilities in the pipeline. The state just passed their budget on Friday, I want to say, over the weekend. And that includes $50 million for land banks. It's going to be administered by HCR, but we have no information yet on when a request for applications will be released or what eligible uses for those funds would be. I'm hopeful that demolitions will be an eligible use, and historically we've done a very good job of bringing home more money from the state than any other land bank because we have a lot of shovel-ready projects. So I think that we'll be in a good position to apply for that money, but I don't know when it will be available.
And Caitlin being Caitlin, you've already sent letters to all the state's representatives, correct?
I sent them all thank you notes yesterday for the hard work they did putting that money in the budget for us.
Love it. Okay. That's awesome.
So we do need demolition funds. A source of that might be coming from the state, but we don't know when. But this money that we're talking about today, coming from the city's general fund, we've historically used for things that we can't fund using other grants. So property maintenance is the big one, but then we also have some other property carrying costs that we've never used city funds for. With this bumping us up to $750 this year, I would think that we would use it for both property maintenance and for some of those carrying costs like liability insurance.
And as counselors, we all know that the property maintenance issue is a big issue
Right.
in neighborhood meetings, you know, making sure that the properties are taken care of, especially when, oh, of course, they're never taken care of before they go to the land bank, but now, you know, there's a dedicated crew to do it, so.
Right. I mean, before they come to the land bank, they're on the seizable list. If neighbors complain, codes goes out there and cites the property owner.
They're
not
dangerous for the neighborhood because
Exactly.
you have people who might live there or might do other illegal things there, so.
Yeah, I mean, spending a little bit more money on property maintenance definitely goes a long way towards making the neighbors happy and helping to stabilize surrounding property values. And when I say property maintenance, that's mowing lawns, picking up a shocking amount of illegally dumped trash, shoveling sidewalks, and boarding windows.
Which Codes does the exact same thing, but then they pass the cost along to whomever the owner may be, right?
Right, so if they're not paying their taxes, they're probably not going to pay that bill for the cut and clean.
Right.
And yeah, we've shown over the years that we do all those things at a much lower cost than the city. So I think it makes a heck of a lot of sense to send all these seizable properties over to the land bank
Right.
and pay us to do the same job cheaper.
Yep. Agree.
Did you guys, in the ARPA funds or the, just the money that you're getting from the city or the county, was there any brownfield cleanup money at all?
We've relied on money from the EPA for that, mostly so far for testing. So we've received a $600,000 grant from the EPA for environmental assessments, and we've probably done 20 phase 1s and about a dozen phase 2s with that. But we do have 4 more properties in our inventory right now that we've done a phase 1, we took title, and we've spent all of our EPA money. So we don't have funds right now for a phase 2. We have another application pending, and we should know in June whether or not we've gotten that, another $500,000 from the EPA.
You can apply for that once a year?
In the fall, yeah. So the tricky thing with that timing is if we are successful and we get the grant, we can't spend that money until October. Well, what I would really like to do is be doing phase 2s now so that I know if it's dirty enough that we need to apply in the fall for a cleanup grant, we can apply. But if we have to wait and we use the EPA money in October, then we would apply in the fall of '23 for cleanup money.
Right.
And we're going to have an unprecedented opportunity this year applying for EPA grants this fall. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed at the federal level gave an extra $1.5 billion to the EPA. And so all of the grants that used to be you could apply for a max of, say, $600,000. Now they're doubling it to where you can apply for $1.2 million, and they're eliminating the local match requirement. So this is definitely the year where we should get ourselves in a position to apply for as much EPA funding as possible.
Great.
Any other questions or comments?
Land Bank does a great job, really integral to our stabilizing our neighborhoods.
Agreed.
You know, and, you know, Caitlin, of course, you know, has been very helpful as far as like calling about seizures and things like that, and getting guidance to some of us counselors about really distressed properties. I'm thinking of one on Kraus and Burnett right now that, you know, our law department will have to deal with as far as that goes. And, you know, and of course, Delaware and Grace, which is a
Yeah.
incredibly problem properties, you know, complex issues and all that, so.
Yeah, that property at Delaware and Grace will be coming down pretty soon. And then once the building is demolished, we do need to go to that site and do a phase 2. There was, it's not really obvious from the outside, but there was an auto repair shop in the back half of the building that faces Grace. If you see, there's a garage door there, and that leads to a reinforced concrete ramp. There's like a parking structure inside there, and cars upstairs. It's crazy. So who knows what kind of contamination might be on site from the auto repair use. But our consultants have come up with a plan where once we get it down to the existing concrete slab, then they can come in and safely do the soil borings to test that site. And our goal would be to make that entire side of the block ready for multifamily apartments, because we own almost every other parcel on that side of the 300 block of Delaware, with one more that's coming through the foreclosure pipeline now. So hopefully we'll find that it's clean enough that apartments would be allowed there, and if not, we'll need to do some soil remediation.
You know, I think that, especially that area, that behemoth building, which is I encourage anybody to drive by, it's unbelievable. But once that building goes down, the whole neighborhood can be revitalized, basically, sort of like what happened over in Woodland Avenue, you know?
Yeah, you know, Woodland.
Shot there then.
Exactly. Woodland, you know, took many years for us to accomplish the site assembly that was necessary. And we're kind of doing the same thing on Delaware right now. We've done a ton of demolitions there over the past few years. And we're at a point now where we've got a good cluster of 4 parcels in a row on the 100 block. We're going to have a cluster of 3 on the 200 block, this entire side of the 300 block, and then 2 corners on the 400 block as well. So you could do a really dense concentration there like was done on Woodland. The difference here is Woodland is zoned for 1 and 2 family homes. This is all zoned residential class B. So somebody doing a LIHTC application, a low-income housing tax credit application, could come in and do multifamily housing, which generally they think is more financially feasible, and this seems like a place where that level of density wouldn't be totally out of character with the neighborhood. You know, we got a proposal last year for someone who wanted to build a 4-story, 38-unit building on the 100 block, and the neighbors did tell us very clearly that that was too much. So somewhere between 2 and 38 units is the right number that we're going to work on talking to the neighbors about what level of density is acceptable to them.
Rudd, why, so, because I was looking for it in the book, so this doesn't go in the book because it's the land bank, because it's separate? Like, why wasn't this in
It's
here?
a special object of expense, so it's in the back of the book.
Oh, okay, got you.
Further in the, what are you shaking your head for? It's not?
No?
Oh, well, it's not, it's in there.
It's in there
It's in
somewhere.
the special objects of expense.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to mention one other thing. Caitlin, one of Caitlin's people is usually at all the TNT meetings, all the neighborhood meetings, to answer any questions.
Yeah, Chevelle is a great resource and keeps
She
us
is
plugged
great.
into every neighborhood.
I take off my budget director hat and put on my mayor of Elmwood hat for 1 second. Can you just, I have two,
Which hat are you putting on?
the mayor of Elmwood.
Mayor of
Mayor
Elmwood.
of Elmwood, okay.
Yeah, I don't know, or whatever.
Self-declared.
I'm gonna hold Elmwood up, but, so 2 questions. One, is it totally off the table, the idea of moving into a property that you have? Because I do still think as your lease expires,
Yeah.
it's still a good idea. Then the second question, could you just speak to South Ave? Because South Ave is empty, and it's emptier and emptier each day, and it almost and you do have a bunch of properties there, and you've had a bunch come down, and a bunch kind of stagnant, and it's maybe the emptiest prime corridor. So at what point is it so empty you can go like attract corporate entities to like build a Starbucks and a Five Guys or something? Because right now it's real empty.
Right. So we received a purchase offer in December from the Women's Economic Institute. They're a nonprofit that currently leases space in one of the buildings owned by the Near West Side Initiative. And they want to build 2 apartment buildings on South Ave. On the 1500 block is where we've done most of the demolitions, immediately south of Colvin. So we have a 0.6 acre site on the east side of the street there, and a ½ acre site on the west side of the street, and that's butting right up against the corner of South Ave and Eastman. And then immediately across the street on the southwest corner of that intersection, there's a smaller parcel that would make a good parking lot probably. Too small to build a big apartment building on. So their proposal is to do a 4-story building on the, I'm gonna get them swapped, a 4-story building on one side of the street and a 3-story building on the other side, with a total of 56 apartments for seniors upstairs and commercial space on the ground floor. And they have not yet identified their tenants, but they're hoping that it'll be kind of a incubator space for small startups. They want to make kind of turnkey ready restaurant space. That's one of the challenges for small restaurants that are getting started, is usually the landlord has not built out all of the restaurant requirements, like your grease trap and your hoods are extremely expensive startup costs. And so they're hoping that they'll have all of that, plus even down to having, tables and chairs, so that an entrepreneur doesn't have as much startup
Just go
cost.
right in.
So that's the goal. They're planning on applying for low-income housing tax credits this fall. And so we've given them a 2-year window to apply for and get those credits. And then once they secure them, we would turn over the properties and they would start construction.
So in the meantime, though, because right now it looks terrible.
Yeah.
With that mountain of dirt right there, and then now the snow has left, so we can see all the garbage and stuff when we drive by.
Yeah, that's a problem with all of the demolitions that go on over the winter, is they can't get their grading and seeding done when there's snow, and now
Right.
it's very muddy this time of year. So this spring, our crews will be going back to all the demos that were done over the winter and doing the grading and grass seeding. So that's the 1500 block. On the 600 block, immediately across the street from Price Right, we have another large chunk of vacant land, and Jubilee has been recruiting a developer from Boston, I believe. Trinity Financial, to come in with a very similar proposal for a mixed-use, multi-story building with affordable apartments upstairs and retail space on the ground
It's gonna be
floor.
a 4-story building.
Okay.
It's commercial on the bottom, and then the other 3 floors are apartments.
So I'm-
Potentially 60.
Yeah, I'm expecting that we'll get a proposal from them soon, and that was included as one of the city's flagship projects in their DRI application, so hopefully they'll benefit from that funding as well.
There's a restaurant coming right by as well. And there's one more thing. What is it? I forget now. There's another project coming in.
On the 800 block, you may have seen that we just knocked down an old church. Right there, we have two 40-foot parcels next to each other, and Jubilee's planning on building a single-family home on each of those. So you'll see two single-family homes going up there. And then at the intersection of Glenwood, Valley, and South, where that all comes together, you know, there's that old 7-Eleven that's just sitting empty there. Right next to it is a dry cleaners that is current on his taxes, but he's looking to get rid of the property. And so Eric Ennis and I have been talking to that property owner about what we might be able to do. Because there's the 7-Eleven, his dry cleaners, and then the next building to the
combining
north will be coming to us pretty soon through the foreclosure process. If we could combine all those, but there's environmental issues to be concerned about with a dry cleaner. So we're chipping away at that problem, and I'm hoping if we get this next EPA grant that we've applied for, that we would be able to do a phase 1 and a phase 2 of that dry cleaners.
Okay.
So it doesn't look great right now, but
Which building is going to you? You said to the north. Do you
immediately
mean-
north of the dry cleaners. It just looks like kind of a blank facade right now. It's a weird building. I think it says
Is it in the
South
same
Ave or
plaza?
on-
on South Ave.
It used to be called the Show Bar,
Oh, it says Char something, C-H-A-R.
Charette.
Char Grill?
That was, years ago, was a saloon. Believe me.
We believe you.
Just, that's all great, but when you describe the two big projects, which require high levels of subsidy and probably are not both going to happen, and there's been a few different proposals like that in the area for bigger buildings, and I do think it probably intuitively makes more sense that they go closer to downtown so people can walk more like next to the Price Right and stuff, but so that still leaves this area from, I don't know, Kirk Park across the south, I have a couple spots, but let's just say Kirk Park up to Glenwood. So,
Well, what I've just described here covers all the properties that we own. So there's nothing else that we control that we can fix.
maybe that's part of the limited vision or something that makes it so it doesn't work, is that it almost needs like a plan. And I get there's some of that, but like,
So in
Vision
2018,
should come from,
MBD.
yeah.
in 2000,
well, like but no one owns more than the land bank.
Well, they,
so the
So she
city,
may not own it all, the land bank may not own it all, but it is mostly owned by the land bank.
plan, I mean,
the city did commission such a plan in 2018, the South Ave Economic Development Corridor Study. And what we've been trying to do is to attract developers to do the very things that were outlined as goals in that plan, but we've just been doing it on properties that we own.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Michael Collins, Neighborhood and Business Development. So this is the type of work that our planning team does very actively, and in great partnership with the land bank.
There are some other blighted properties between the park and what we own on the 1500 block. There's an auto repair shop immediately south of the creek there where Lower Onondaga Park comes in, you know, that big blue building. It was owned by AME Church over on Salina Street. I think somebody donated it to the church, but they've sold it recently. I don't recall what the zoning district is there, but it must be local business class A. I think most of the rest of the
I've gotten
corridor
a few
is.
calls on that one.
Yeah, I would love to see whoever owns that now do something productive with it, but it's tax current. I've been keeping my eye on it. And then the plaza there, where there used to be a post office, is there still a post office there?
No, it's vacant.
It's just really underutilized, and of course, they're tax current also, so I don't know what we could do as a community to encourage redevelopment of that space.
And then in the 900 South Ave, potentially, which is part of the study as well, the community asked for a gas station.
Yes.
So, I mean, we don't have a vendor yet, but everybody, I'm sure many people are looking.
Yeah, that is a site where we were able to get a phase 1 and a phase 2 done, and now we're just trying to attract somebody to put a gas station there.
So the process that Neighborhood and Business Development uses when we're doing this type of work, certainly a tremendous amount of neighborhood engagement. Deputy Commissioner Michelle Skapansky's team does a lot of that, a lot of engagement through the potential businesses, through our economic development side of the business, and then really understanding, making sure that we're doing the research to understand what the metrics are when you look at the census data for those neighborhoods, and knowing then also what types of businesses are attracted to that type of data, so we can really try to match up where there's where the desire exists, where the opportunity exists, and where businesses might want to come in. It's a significant challenge in some areas. Grocery stores are a great example of us always pushing to find grocery stores to fill in areas where we know that there's food deserts, and grocers saying, hey, look, I can't be profitable with what the census data is right there. So we're always working on how do we create development that does make that area more attractive, and that's frankly where the ability for the land bank to do the land acquisition and land holding creates opportunity that frankly we didn't have before the land bank existed.
And I think thinking outside the box too, like I understand people have said a gas station because it's probably there, and I don't want to say this to be disrespectful or demeaning to anyone, but some people, if that's all they see, that's all they know. So just thinking outside of the box and maybe bringing something there that's creative that they wouldn't have thought of. If you only go outside and see certain things, that's the only thing that you know that exists. Mm-hmm. So the first thing people are gonna say is, oh, a gas station or a grocery store, like, because they haven't saw anything else. So maybe it's just a matter of being creative and bringing something there that they didn't know they needed, you know what I mean? But just out of conversation with people, you can kind of get a gist of things that they need in their lives. They just don't know how to identify it because they never saw it before.
And that's where the good planning comes in.
I think we got to be aware that it took 50, 60 years for South Avenue to get where it was. Mm-hmm. And we also have, I'm intimately familiar, being a South Sider, with South Avenue. When you closed the post office, that had 100 people working in there. Mm-hmm. When you closed Elmwood School, it had like hundreds of people working there. You had 2 diners on South Avenue. We had a lot of activity. You had a theater years ago down on South Avenue. I mean, there were 2 theaters, as a matter of fact. So there was a lot of density there. And now you got to rebuild the density. I mean, those diners depended on the people from Elmwood School. They depended on the post office people, You had Simmons School of Embalming. You had a large amount of people that lived in that neighborhood because they went to that school. They came from all over the state. So it's taken a hit over the years, but I think it's coming back. And, obviously there's a lot of emphasis and focus on that South Avenue, like there should be on all our business corridors,
Well, Councilor, I think the point that you make about this being an ecosystem, it's who lives there and who works there. Right. So it's what's the economic power during the day, what's the economic power during the evening, and therefore what types of businesses are then therefore attracted to that to provide the amenities that people want. And exactly to your point, Councilor Allen, about if we're really stuck, then we know what we know. But when we're able to have a broader vision, and that's really where the planning team comes in and the business specialists come in, then we can have that vision, but we need the partner of the land bank to be able to make sure that between them and the other tools that we have, we can actually have that vision become a reality.
I should also mention we had 3 properties in a row on the 1800 block immediately south of the Colonial Laundromat, and we have sold those to a local contractor named Antonio Owens who lives on the south side. He's purchased homes from us before and done some really good quality flips. He runs a construction company. His plan is to renovate those to have an event venue on the ground floor, kind of an outdoor event space in the back.
Which building?
Pretty deep parcel.
Which one?
Used to say Moet Lounge.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was a diner in one of the buildings. There's 2 buildings next to each other. So he
that little garage thing that's right on the corner, what is that?
That is owned
Can
by,
y'all take it?
It's tax current, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I don't know. It's owned by the guy that has the auto garage, or the auto repair shop on Grand Ave, just west of where the Don Juan's Mexican restaurant is.
Okay.
He owns that auto garage, and he uses that building over on South Ave for parts storage, which may not even be allowed in a local business Class A zoning district. Now that I'm thinking about it, you can't have a warehouse. But he pays his taxes, and he could potentially be willing to sell, but I've talked to him about it before, and he says, well, he'd have to find another place that is about the same size, and that's something that we struggle with, really, is helping people who have more industrial uses find locations. I get calls every day from small contractors that want a space to store their vehicles and their building materials, and it's not allowed in our local business districts, and we just don't have a whole lot of industrially zoned land in the city.
Gotcha.
So that's on the,
Give the land bank more money.
Me too.
Me too.
Wow.
It's a quorum, or do we have a quorum? It's
while
right.
it's on my mind, just talking about some other things that South Ave has going for it. You know, right now it's a major commuter corridor, and the SMTC traffic study numbers show that there's a lot more traffic there and kind of eyes on that corridor every day than in a lot of our other areas. So I would think that that would be an attractor for new businesses. And again, with the federal infrastructure bill passing that I mentioned earlier, I expect that we'll see more money coming to Centro for things like bus rapid transit. And that is one of the corridors that they've identified for bus rapid transit from downtown up to OCC. So hopefully with that many more people commuting down that corridor, it'll help support some more businesses there.
Cool. Alrighty. So if there's no, are you telling me to hurry up?
No, I just said, let's wrap it up.
Oh, okay. All right, well, we are all finished with this meeting, so we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your work.
Thank you, Counselor Hogan.